One of the reasons why I made the first Unexpectedly Dark Episodes video is to bring up episodes that no one ever really talks about, or from shows where you wouldn't really expect something this dark. I mean, we've all heard of Courage the Cowardly Dog and that time Tom and Jerry killed themselves, but you're expecting to see those in a list about dark episodes, right? This series was just meant to do something different. So today, we'll be looking at 6 more unexpectedly dark episodes in kid shows. Josh kicks Drake out of his life.
Well, stop being mad at me.
I'm not mad at you. I'm done.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
So what, are you gonna move out?
No. This is a house where I live, and I guess we'll be roommates until the day I leave for college, but that's all we'll be, is roommates. I'm done with you.
When characters get into fights in kid shows, it's usually nothing too serious. A little misunderstanding or a minor fight, a few jokes and jabs here and there, and then the lesson is learned. However, things got a little more serious in Drake and Josh. The episode Josh is done is exactly that. Josh simply becomes too fed up with how selfish and disrespectful Drake can be, so Josh just ends up being done with him. The episode kicks off with a big chemistry exam coming up, which Josh is studying heavily for. Drake goes to school early so he can make out with his girlfriend, leaving Josh behind, who is then late for the exam, which causes it to go down an entire letter grade. At first, Josh is furious, but over time, he calms down and decides that his life would be better if Drake weren't in it. He begins to treat Drake like a roommate instead of a brother, leading to Josh's life being exponentially better. He retakes the exam and gets a higher score, he makes new friends, his rash is gone, and overall he just has an amazing life without Drake. The sad part is that Josh isn't even ignoring Drake or being mean to him or anything. He's treating him in a completely civil manner, but there's no love or friendship in his words. He's literally just a roommate to him now.
Dude, it's been like 5 days. When are you gonna stop being mad at me?
I told you I'm not mad at you. I'm done with you.
Josh.
I mean it.
This, of course, starts to affect Drake and makes him realize how much he actually needs Josh. Maybe even more than Josh needs him. Towards the end of the episode, back in chemistry class, Drake is late this time around. He finds that Josh has switched lab partners, leaving him alone with Clayton. Due to Clayton's constant mumbling, Drake doesn't even understand what to do during their experiments, and ends up with a chemical accident, leading him to take a power shower.
Sit down, Drake. Drake, sit down.
No!
Drake.
Josh! What? Look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm probably the worst brother in the world, and, you're way better off without me, I just need you to understand that, Sorry, Josh, I'm sorry.
Later that night, Drake lays alone and depressed in his room. Josh comes in and reconciles with his brother over a game of ping pong, forgiving him and ending the episode. I don't think this episode is as dark as it is serious, but yeah, it's super serious and super unexpected that I just had to include it. I had to bring this episode up because it doesn't get talked about a lot. I remember it leaving a huge impact on me when I first saw it. It's just sad seeing these brothers being torn apart by a very real situation. And apparently the rest of the world agrees. Because if we're being honest here, this is probably what would happen if someone like Josh was around someone like Drake in real life. Thankfully, this is not real life. And the episode ends with the status quo remaining intact. But still, for a brief moment, a bleak sense of realism snuck its way into this Nickelodeon sitcom, and has certainly left an impact. Chucky sees a life where he was never born. There are times when everything just seems to go wrong. We feel like a failure, annoying to our friends or family, or just uncomfortable in our own skin. Sometimes you might even wonder, what would it be like if you were never born? This type of plot was first seen in media back in 1946, in It's a Wonderful Life, and has since been parodied in movies and cartoons for quite a while.
I'm worth more dead than alive.
Now look, you mustn't talk like that. I won't get my wings with that attitude. You just don't know all that you've done. If it hadn't been for you...
Yeah, if it hadn't been for me, everybody would be a lot better off. My wife and my kids and my friends. Look, little fella, why you go off and haunt?
The Rugrats episode, Chucky's Wonderful Life, is still a pretty funny episode, but it has a rather disturbing nature to it, showing just how far our minds can go when creating the worst possible outcome. The story begins with Angelica telling Chucky that the world would be better off without him. Taking in these harsh words, Chucky decides to run away from home before his guardian angel, who looks identical to him, appears to show him a world where he was never born. In this world, his father Chaz is lonely and a bit unhinged. Having never married, he lives alone with only a sock puppet and C-SPAN to keep him company.
Well, C-SPAN it is then. Saki?
Yeah?
I wish you were real.
Me too.
I don't like this, Mr. Angel Guy. You ain't seen nothing yet.
The streets are run down and almost post-apocalyptic. Phil and Lil have become horrible delinquents who take pleasure in destroying their house while their spineless parents watch on and sob. Without Chucky, the twins would never know the difference between right and wrong. And then there's Tommy, who is now seen living in poverty as he rummages around the trash for food. And without Chucky around, Angelica came by and took everything from Tommy, including his house and his parents. Nobody stopped her because she just kept yelling until she got her way. And now morbidly obese, Angelica forces Stu and Dee Dee to bake her cookies, which she never shares. Tommy never stood up for himself because he needed a friend like Chucky to lean back on in order to become brave. Chucky realizes that his life does have meaning. He sees that he has value. He has friends and family that love him very much. Given that Chucky is only 2 years old, it's pretty obvious that the world wouldn't change that much had he not been born. Especially not the way it was in his vision. But this episode just goes on to show just how overactive our imaginations can be, convincing us that the world would be better off without us. But deep down, you and I know that's not true. We all have worth and value, everybody watching this. It's also rather upsetting that a toddler could imagine such things as poverty and literally slavery. SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs kill a health inspector and try to hide his body. While this episode is still pretty funny, things become pretty dark and disturbing once you remove the comedic bits. Out of all the episodes on this list, this is the one that gets brought up a lot. And, well, yeah, I'm going to talk about it too, because it is just a little messed up. In the episode Nasty Patty from SpongeBob SquarePants, the Krusty Krabs is given a surprise visit by the health inspector. He orders one of everything, with his last dish being an ordinary Krabby Patty. Right before they can serve him the hamburger, a TV report comes on, warning locals of a criminal disguised as a health inspector in order to get free food. Being the stingy old man that he is, Mr. Krabs is outraged at the thought that their health inspector could be the faker. So to get revenge, him and SpongeBob create the titular Nasty Patty, a Krabby Patty that was made with volcano hot sauce, seahorse radish, toenail clippings, was dropped in the toilet, and then dried off with Mr. Krabs' sweaty gym socks. Right before the health inspector can eat it, a fly goes down his mouth, causing him to choke and pass out. While the two enjoy watching him suffer, the TV reports that the fake health inspector has been caught, and it was definitely not their guy. The two begin to panic, blaming each other until they get the idea to bury the dead body. On a dark and stormy night, the two drag the body to the top of a hill in order to ditch it. While digging a hole, SpongeBob throws a rock, which hits the now conscious health inspector in the head, causing him to pass out again. After they finish, the police arrive and offer to give them a ride back to the Krusty Krab, and to their shock, the body slides down the hill, thanks to the rain turning the ground to, well, mud. The police don't notice, so they simply stuff the body in the trunk. And now back at the Krusty Krab, the officers slowly become suspicious of what's going on. SpongeBob stuffs the body in the freezer, but when the officer goes to get ice for a soda, they find that the body is missing. The health inspector appears behind them, moaning like a zombie.
You guys.
The officers then proceed to beat the shit out of him until it's revealed that he's alive and that the Krusty Krab passed their health inspection. They all celebrate with Krabby Patties as the kitchen door slams on the health inspector's head. Comedy aside, this episode is kinda messed up. The health inspector is just literally doing his job until he chokes on a fly and passes out, and there's nobody to help him recover. And while SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs try to bury him alive, he keeps getting hit in the head, which must have caused some form of brain damage. And then when he finally wakes up, the police beat him senseless until it's revealed that he's still alive. And then, another courtesy blow to the head with the kitchen door. The health inspector was never made aware that SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs attempted to poison him. Also, it's kind of disturbing how the two of them take delight in the inspector's suffering while he's choking. At the end, they just care more about the Krusty Krab and the health inspection instead of, helping out the guy that was almost buried alive. Donatello is sent to a dystopic future. The 2003 reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was no doubt an edgier depiction of the heroes in a half-shell than the original 80s series. That's not to say that it was a super grim dark retelling, but it definitely followed the darker aesthetic of the comic series more closely. This is very evident in the episode, Same as It Never Was. The episode starts out with a bang, when the turtles are ambushed by Ultimate Draco. Vowing revenge, he promises to teach the turtles, quote-unquote, the meaning of suffering beyond time and space. Using the Time Scepter, he sends Donatello into a distant future, where he lands in the turtle lair, although it is completely decimated. Confused as to where he is, he makes his way outside, where he is immediately arrested. However, a future Michelangelo appears and saves Donnie. He explains that Shredder had won, and the entire planet is now under his control. Donnie was the glue that held the turtles together, but when he disappeared over 30 years ago, the turtles fell apart. Mikey then leads Donnie to Splinter's grave.
He's over there.
No! Master Splinter is... No!
A couple years after you disappeared, Master Splinter gave his life protecting the three of us.
I can't believe this place. It's all so horrible.
They head to a resistance base where they meet a future April O'Neil and learn that Casey Jones had died. The turtles reluctantly reconvene now that Donnie is back. Leonardo is heavily scarred, Raphael is missing an eye, and Mikey is missing an arm. They all look like they've just been through hell. They team up with Hun and Baxter Stockman in order to take down Shredder. During the fight, Shredder crushes Hun and Baxter to death. Michelangelo is surrounded and killed by mechs. Shredder's daughter Karai kills Leonardo and Raphael with her sword. With Donnie now on the brink of death, Shredder pins him against the tunneler, preparing for the final blow. Luckily, Donnie prepared for this, and has chains spring out from the tunneler and wrap themselves around Shredder. The drill activates and pulls Shredder in, ripping him to, well, shreds.
My brothers. My poor brothers. This world. This future. It's a nightmare.
As he reflects on this horrific nightmare, Donnie is pulled back to his own timeline, leaving April as the sole survivor of all her friends, alone. And that's it. We don't get to see Donnie return home. We end the episode as if this was truly the end. The idea of a dystopic, bad future has been done before this, of course, but to show this level of detail and brutality and not pass it off as a dream or something is really surprising. This episode was actually heavily requested by a ton of you in the comments of the last video. So, yeah, this is definitely one of the darkest moments in an already dark reboot. Kids Next Door's all-female future. Imagine a future where the only way to repopulate the human race has been exterminated and made illegal. A future where half of the human race have been wiped out. That's the future that was created in the codenamed Kids Next Door episode Operation Future, otherwise known as Female's Utopian Trap Unleashes Reprehensible Evil. In this episode, Number 4 is sent to St. Rita's Preparatory School, only to discover that it's an all-girls boarding school. The headmaster, Miss Margaret, reveals an evil plan to turn all boys into girls, and attempts to convert Number 4. He escapes and plans to call for help, but believes that he can handle a bunch of girly girls on his own. Margaret is shown to be a child in a robot suit, gaining assistance from her future self to ensure a future utopia without men. Realizing he needs help, Ford calls the other K&D members, only to find out that they've already been turned into girls.
Oh, I know, silly!
You're missing the tea party! Hurry over, we're doing makeovers next!
They trap 4, and we cut to 75 years into the future. In this dystopian apocalypse, it's revealed that boys have become enslaved by girls. However, a resistance of boys led by an elderly number 4, calling themselves the Boys Next Door, fight for their freedom. Number 3's granddaughter Sally approaches the boys to offer help, as she was inspired by stories of the past where boys and girls fought together. With her help, the boys are able to defeat Madame Margaret. Number 4 goes back to the past, and with the K&D, they alter and save the future, erasing future number 4, Sally, and all of them from history. Despite being a genius, Madame Margaret is apparently unable to see how eliminating boys would cause a genocide of the human race, or at least she doesn't care. It's also implied that they take men prisoner for amusement, which I guess explains why there are kids in the future still. This episode also has its fair share of problems. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm pretty sure showcasing girls as giggling crybabies who only like pink and boys as gross, dirty, sports-loving good guys would not be okay nowadays.
Pink is so pretty! I love ponies! I'm a pixie! I've got a basket with flowers!
All in all, this is another one of those horrible, dystopic future episodes, but the implications here are really kind of messed up. This is what happens when a silly little schoolyard battle between boys and girls goes too far. You get a genocidal maniac who begins the extinction of the human race, and that's a pretty big leap. Stoutland dies in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Death is rarely touched upon in the Pokemon franchise. You would think that a series about animals beating each other up, as well as having actual ghosts present, would feature death a bit more often, but it's barely brought up. It's usually relegated to select locations like the Pokemon Tower in Lavender Town, or Mount Pyre in the Hoenn region. However, the anime has finally decided to address the elephant in the room in the episode One Journey Ends, Another Begins of the Sun and Moon series. The episode begins with the usual cutesy and fun antics one would expect in a Pokemon anime. Ash and Pikachu have just finished some grocery shopping, but a wild Lyn appears and steals one of their donuts. The duo chases Lyn and discovers that it's bringing it to Stoutland in exchange for teaching it Fire Fang. As Ash watches, he notices how frail Stoutland looks. The next day after school, the two go back to visit Lyn and Stoutland, only to find the latter collapsed on the ground, suffering from severe breathing problems. Despite its size, Ash carries Stoutland on his back to the Pokemon Center. Meowth from Team Rocket looks on, sadly, knowing what is happening. At the Pokemon Center, Nurse Joy informs them of Stoutland's condition. Later that night, Lyn and Stoutland are both missing from the center. Assuming they must have returned to the bridge, Ash sets off to find them. However, much to his surprise, he's encountered by Meowth, who states that he wants to protect Lyn and make sure it's not captured by Team Rocket. At the bridge, Stoutland continues trying to teach Lyn Fire Fang, which it fails at. Stoutland falls asleep, with Lyn curling up right beside it.
Stop.
Throughout the episode, we see a tree with a limited amount of leaves, with a leaf falling each time Stoutland's health gets worse. As the final leaf falls, Lyn realizes that Stoutland has passed away. It cries out as the rain begins to pour. Ash tries to give it some food to cheer it up, but it doesn't want to eat. Finally, after the rain passes, Litten sees a cloud resembling Stalin, leading it to accept its fate and move on. The two of them battle and become teammates, and they share some food in memory of Stalin. This is a much more somber take on death than Pokemon has had. In this episode, we see a wide array of emotions that one would go through when losing a friend or a pet. I mean, it's no coincidence that Stalin was chosen for this episode, given how closely it resembles a dog. Pokemon dying aren't discussed often in the main continuity, but this one shows a more hopeful side to the situation, a side that shows that losing a friend is just simply a part of life. It's not so much a goodbye as it is a so long for now. Denial and acceptance go hand in hand, and Pokemon, of all things, showcases that very well.